Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth and my colleagues on City Council. I want to welcome everyone to our council meeting this evening. And I would ask that we all, at this time, please stand for a moment of silence, and afterwards we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, and tonight we have on the dais with us Deputy City Clerk, Ms. Ashley Hill. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Present.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Here.
Mr. Moody?
Here.
Mr. Tillage?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker?
Present.
And Mayor Glover?
Here. We do have the minutes of a called meeting on March 14th, 2023, the minutes of a regular meeting on March the 14th, 2023, and a special called meeting on March 20th, 23. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move adoption.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Madam Clerk, at this time, would you please read the City Council rules for speakers?
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than to any particular member of the City Council, staff, or audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have now come to the item on the agenda, City Manager's Report, item 23-104. And Madam Clerk, could you please read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting settlement funds in the amount of $80,243.88 from the National Opioid Settlement Fund Trust and appropriating said amount in the FY 2023 Behavioral Health Care Service Fund for use by BHS for approved abatement purposes as defined by the Virginia Opioid Fund and Settlement Allocation MOU.
Thank you, ma'am. We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move adoption. Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Item 23-105. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a COVID-19 vaccine and health equity grant in the amount of $14,627 from the Virginia Department of Health and appropriating said amount in the FY 2023 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Libraries.
Thank you, ma'am. We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes, ma'am. Item 23-106. And Madam Clerk, would you read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance to decrease the appropriation to the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools General Fund budget by $696,054 at the request of PPS.
Thank you, ma'am. We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move adoption. Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burt?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillett?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Item 23-107. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, an ordinance to decrease the appropriation to the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Grants Fund budget by $12,757 at the request of PPS.
Thank you, ma'am. We are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burt?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillett?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Item 23-108. Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance to decrease the appropriation to the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Textbook Fund budget by $332 at the request of PPS.
We are in need of a motion and a second.
Move adoption. Second.
Any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burt?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillett?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. The next item, item 23-109. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance to reappropriate unexpended/carryover funds in the amount of $81,136,709 from the FY 2022 Portsmouth Public Schools Grants Fund budget to the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Grants Fund budget.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have a speaker for this item, and that speaker is Steve Carroll. Sir, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Evening, Mayor.
Evening, sir.
I'll be working off of two.
Mr. Carroll, could you hold a minute, ma'am? I apologize. I just needed to do our motion in a second. I was going to do that first.
Okay.
Point of order there.
Not a problem.
Do we have a motion and a second on this item?
Move for adoption.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Carroll, you have the floor, sir.
I'm going to be juggling two agendas. November 22nd, 2022. Council voted 7-0 to reappropriate unexpended school funds somewhere in the neighborhood of $22 to $23 million. And it was a 7-0 vote, 6 different item numbers. And no explanation was given about where that money came from, what it was originally intended to be for, and what it was going to go to. So tonight, we have 23 TAC 109, where we're going to add to that $81 million of unexpended funds. And in the description, I don't see any explanation of where that money originally came from, what it was originally allocated for, and where it will go. Now, I understand we have a gentleman's agreement that we don't interfere with the school board's expenditures. I would like to think, however, that before my city council appropriates money to anybody, you know where it's going. 81 plus 23. In my math, that's $104 million. Now, my comments on this item are going to be completely tied into my comments non-agenda. And it's also noteworthy that these are 2022 numbers. I can only assume that we're moving those to the 23, the rest of the budget, the tail end of the budget. Any way you look at it, this should result and a significant ability to reduce the 23 to 24 school budget. It's also an opportunity to reduce the real estate tax rate, is it not? Now, I understand that some of this money might be COVID money. That train already left. Regardless of the reason for not spending the money, the need for it no longer exists. Now, maybe I'm missing something here, and it won't be the first time I've been wrong. But I think I need an explanation, and the taxpayers need an explanation as where this money is going to go and why we need to return it when we have so much need in this city right now. And I'm coming here non-adversarial. It's more of a question. But that's a lot of money to have unexpended surplus. Thank you.
Mr. Carroll, sir, if you would like to remain.
Sure.
The city manager, I do believe, has a response to some of your questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Carroll. Nice
Hi.
to see you. I just wanted to clear up a few things because, again, this has been a question that council has brought to my attention as well. They have the same concerns. But what I just wanted to mention, for this $81 million, this is associated with grant funds. What it is they may have a grant over a 2-year period or a 3-year period. And most of their grants, as you know, usually are for salaries and some other things. And so what happens, just like ARPA money, it's on a reimbursement basis. So I think what I would like for the public to understand as it relates to this roll forward money for schools on this particular item, it is all grant funded, grant related. And some of those things that they have not even received reimbursement on, it's just a matter of they got the award and the reimbursement has to be done. And whether they've spent all of those dollars, they have a 2-year period and they roll forward. What I would probably bring to council at a later date, because my schedule is packed, maybe some things as it relates to grants that they have not got funding for in advance. We could probably look at that and kind of determine how we could change how this type of ordinance comes before council, so it won't give the illusion that they're sitting on dollars and haven't spent them. They've been awarded these funds, but those dollars have not been spent nor reimbursed or received. So I just wanted a quick, just not for everything, but definitely for this situation and matter at hand.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you may, sir.
Thank you. So what are our options and how much of this money is committed to, how much of this is a done deal for the schools and how much of this can we reallocate and keep for the city, because it is unexpended and reallocated, so you have some power over this money?
Only as it relates to a local match or our local contribution. These funds are federal and state dollars. And
Okay.
if you would, please, if you would provide me with your email, I can definitely share the list of how that's allocated as it relates to the grants that and the award for those particular dollars.
Thank you. In the future,
Yeah.
it might be beneficial to make that clear in the agenda
And
item.
I think that's fair. And when I looked at it, that's what brought me to the thought of how can we do this differently so it doesn't set a precedence that they're just rolling and sitting on dollars. These are actually real, true grant-related funds and awards that some of those dollars, they are reimbursable. So they're just asking to continue to have this award roll forward, and those dollars have a time frame that they have to be spent or lost anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Once again, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any additional discussion from my colleagues? Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and to Mr. Carroll's earlier question, I want to assure you that I'm asking questions. So the money that you spoke to that was rolled over last November with the prior council, you asked where did it come from? My research says that most of that money came from the fact that we budgeted for the teachers that we need. We don't have the teachers that we need on the payroll, and so that salary ended up not being expended because we need teachers. And so So we need we have work to do with Dr. Bracy to figure out how to attract, recruit teachers to fully staff the schools. And in my discussions with him, he's committed and they're working hard on that. For this $81 million, you asked where did that money come from? It's COVID money, mostly. So American Recovery Protection Act, 46 million of the 81 million. Elementary school and secondary school relief fund is the bulk of the rest of the funds. To your point, it's a lot of money. Even for a guy that fixes ships for a living, $81 million caught my attention. And I think it is worth understanding where Dr. Bracy intends to use that money to make the investment. To your point that COVID's over, I would argue COVID's not over. We have a whole school system full of kids who were trying to school at home, and despite trying, we not just in our school system but across the country, we've lost at least a year, maybe 2 years of real education during that time that kids were trying to learn from home. And that recovery is a burden on all of us. We've got kids in the 6th grade that basically are working at the 4th grade level because they missed that piece of their education. And that's going to take a long time to recover. Just because the pandemic is over doesn't mean that the learning challenges are over. And so really important, in my opinion, that we hire the number of teachers that we need, and all of us need to be out recruiting and helping Dr. Bracy get those teacher slots filled. And so the other concern that I have about the $81 million that we're rolling over, the ARPA money and the ESSER money in particular, we have until end of calendar year 24 to spend that money. And it's a lot of money that we need to figure out what needs to be spent and how can it be spent strategically, really to help our kids recover from the time that they were marking time in front of their computer screens, trying to learn from home. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And for the pleasure of the other citizens who are listening and here present tonight, I know that Mr. Carroll requested the information, but just for your listening ears, some of the high dollar grants that this are going to, early reading initiative, reading specialists, we have our Virginia preschool initiative, we have our regional adult ed educational programs, we have SOL algebra readiness, and those are local matches, and our math and reading, which Councilman Hugo spoke about, and our Virginia preschool initiative local matches. So some of the high dollar amounts, and there's a whole list of things that their 81 million is going to. So I guess if Mr. Carroll want that information, I guess if any other citizens want that information, we will be able to provide that to you as well.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. Are there any other discussion on this matter? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Item 23-110. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. A resolution authorizing the conveyance of various title interests in 3 parcels of property owned by the City of Portsmouth in the vicinity of the Pitch Kettle Road to the City of Suffolk in furtherance of the Pitch Kettle Road realignment project.
Thank you, ma'am. We are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Item 23-111 And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a firearm violence intervention and prevention fund grant in the amount of $500,000 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and appropriating said amount in the FY 2023 Grants Fund for use by the Portsmouth Police Department for violent crime reduction efforts.
Thank you, ma'am. We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And Mayor Glover?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. We have now come to new business. And under new business, item 23-112, Boards and Commissions. Councilman Moody, do we have anything to report on boards and commissions?
We do not, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We have now come to item 23-113, items submitted by council members. Council members, do we have any items to submit? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor. Then Vice Mayor Lucas-Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We had a presentation earlier during our public work session which dealt with the Sugar Hill report back, and due to the interest of time, did not have opportunity to comment at that time because we wanted to make sure that we weren't rushed through the process. The city attorney and her staff presented a report back on the Sugar Hill property, an issue that was presented to this council previously when properties that the city owned were attempted to be transferred back to the city. And in looking at that, it caused some interest as to why this was occurring. There was a subsequent investigation by the city assessor who pointed out that there was an aggressive use of tax sales, and particularly private tax sales by the city to acquire the properties on Sugar Hill. I'm disturbed with the report that was given because of several issues. The Sugar Hill community, as was mentioned, a historically black community that was founded by former slaves. And the problem I have with the report is that it gives no context to the conduct that was perpetrated by the city. It merely gives us a report as to what occurred and what the city can do to restore those properties back to the owners. I'm highly problemed by that because it does not take into account the historical context out of which those properties were taken. If you don't have the context, then your conclusions will be incorrect. For those of us who are from Portsmouth or have a history or knowledge of Portsmouth, you will note that that community has been disturbed by not only city policy, but also by some transportation issues. Number one, I want to point out that when those properties were taken, they weren't taken just one by one, and it was over a number of decades in which the properties were taken. The report back that we received earlier, we also had minutes from 1910, I believe, as far as city council's intent to get those properties and develop them industrially. I have a serious problem with not taking into account the context of when all of that happened. Because when you look at the time period, although those properties were taken in 78 and 89, when you look at the context of what was happening, you can't look at it from just the 1978, 1989 perspective. You have to look at historically what was happening that allowed for a culture to exist for that to occur. And when I look at the data on Portsmouth, and I see that a city that was founded in 1752, and you do not get any black participation in policy making in this city until 1968, when Mayor Holly and Raymond Turner are elected to the city council, which means now for 216 years, black folks were left out of policy making in this city. And then it was not until 1984 that we get, for the first time in this city, a majority black city council on which our present Senator Lucas was a member. I say that because these land transactions that took place in a context where black folks did not have any power at the city council level to try to circumvent the acts from occurring. These are not things that just happened in Portsmouth, but it was happening nationwide, where tax sales, where there were folks who were forced off of properties, Rosewood and Greenwood. And so I want to point out that this incident that we're looking at here with the Sugar Hill properties, council has a decision to make. And it's not all about just doing what's legal, it's doing what's right. And when you see that folks have been wrong and all we come back with is a legal address, which you heard no one comment to, and we know the city, we know what was going on in Portsmouth at that time. At that same time, we can look at communities that border Sugar Hill. Isn't it interesting that Shea Terrace and Port Norfolk are still intact? That you don't see their houses demolished. You see investment in Shea Terrace. They didn't tear down Shea Terrace Elementary School. They invested in it and made it an apartment. So why is it that in the black neighborhood, the old colored school of Penner's Point is gone? The houses are gone, and it was intentional. When you look at Port Norfolk, you see investment, even though Port Norfolk was a sundown town where black folks had to get out of there by 5 p.m. All of that context is important because what happened on Sugar Hill was no mistake. It was intentional, just like was happening all around the country. And so when we take into account the context, the challenge is upon council to do the right thing. I find it interesting, the silence that we could hear on this council after that report. And I think it's a disservice that what that community experienced, not only what the city did, but what the state also did in putting in the Martin Luther King Expressway, which divided that community. Those were all intentional acts. And so I say to this council that it is time for us to show some moral courage, and we need to correct a wrong that was done. And it's nothing to try to talk about heirs property. I appreciate the discussion on heirs property, but that's a distraction from what actually occurred to those black folks on Sugar Hill. And I think when we look at this city and see the context out of which it occurred, we'll know that the assessor was correct, that it was aggressive and it was intentional. And we know for a fact that there are places in this city where folks have not paid taxes, organizations, a golf course, and you do not see tax sales happening. So why did it happen to that black community? And for those of you who think that's racist, it's the truth. And for those who don't want to face the truth, that's something you got to deal with. But I know that there were generations that were harmed by the fact that they cannot pass down generational wealth to their children and their children's children. And it goes beyond heir property. I don't care if they did or did not have a will. There were locations in this country where black folks had wills and they were still forced off the property. They were still denied opportunities to pass down generational wealth. And so I am highly disturbed by the fact that now the children of slaves are sitting up here allowing for this wrongful act to occur and sit up here and be silent and allow for the perpetuation of racism and generational disparities to continue. And I think it's time for us to stop just being up here and allowing things to happen, but when we are put in positions, we ought to make a difference.
Thank you, sir.
And so, Mr. Mayor, you're always talking about you're the leader of the city. Show us some leadership on how we address this blatant racism. What are we going to do as a council to get beyond just air property discussion? And that might be something we have to tackle. But if we have to tackle it to correct the wrong, then I say let's do it. Because those persons were denied property rights, and it was intentional. And we know it was intentional because this is Portsmouth, and we know the history of Portsmouth, and we know what transpired. So, Mr. Mayor, I challenge you, show some leadership on this and not sit silent on it.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
It's not just a comment.
Are there
I'm
any,
I'm asking this. I'm asking that, Mr. Mayor, that you put forth a resolution that this council acknowledge the wrong that occurred at Sugar Hill, and that this council move forward with correcting it.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
And I didn't think you would, because I know the ones who have lined your pocket. And it's the same good old boy system. It's the same good old boy system that took those folks' property. And so I know you're going to sit silent. I didn't expect you to say anything, because I remember how you came to this city. And so those same ones that have perpetrated the fraud on these citizens, those are the same ones that you have to answer to. I didn't think you would.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other items submitted under council? Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. We did receive some presentations during our work session on the Community Development Block Grant Program, Come Home to Portsmouth Down Payment Program, and of course, Understanding Heirs Property. And closing out this Women's History Month, I think it's only fitting that I give you some information about women and property ownership. Throughout history, women have had to push to achieve parity with men in many arenas, and housing is no different. And in the 1960s, the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 prohibited discrimination in real estate on the basis of sex, race, religion, and a number of other protected classes. Many women also began entering the workforce in the 1960s decade, and encouraged by the Equal Pay Act of 1963. And I found it interesting during one of the presentations, the question that I asked was, did it apply to men and women, husband and wife, if they were over the age of 65? And the response was yes, if the woman was also a homeowner on the house. And that was alarming to me. Because although women had varying degrees of property rights and financial freedoms throughout history, it was technically legal for banks to refuse loans and credit to unmarried women or to require at least their husband's permission to be able to acquire a loan to purchase a home. So I'm encouraging women on this last 2-3 days of Women's History Month to acquire property and to be property owners and to understand your property and the heirs and the having a power of attorney and taking leadership over your home. Of course, in my house, I'm definitely a homeowner on it, but I would hate to see the list of women who are not even on their husbands on the deed with their husbands. So women, in this Women's History Month, in this day and time, in 2023, when 1963, when they passed this opportunity for you to become legal to be able to own your own property. This is 60 years later. I'll be 60 this year on my birthday in August, and I was born in 1963. So I'm encouraging you to be on homeowners and to understand your home and the heirs of your children.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Hugo, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I want to apologize to Chief Jenkins, Chief Magabat, and in particular to our 911 dispatchers. During our special council meeting last Monday night, we discussed 911 data, and there were some anomalies in that 911 data that I shared. And I suggested then that we need to pursue understanding the anomalies in that 911 data. I won't back down from that statement, but my comments were read by, in particular, our 911 dispatchers as being critical of their performance, and that was not my intent. We're going to get to the bottom of the 911 challenges as we discussed at the special council meeting last Monday night, and understand how much of the improvement is going to be as a result of system improvements and what other changes need to be made. But I want the police force, the fire department, and in particular our 911 dispatchers to know that we appreciate the work that you do every day, even with the challenges that we have put you or have put in front of you with some of the system issues that are out there. And additionally, to Chief Jenkins' credit, who stood here and never made excuses about being understaffed, but frankly, some of the anomalies in the data in terms of response are the result of the 911 dispatchers needing to triage the calls that come into 911 for the police. The good news is if it's a top priority, the police are notified within just a few minutes, just like the fire department. And if it's your cat's stuck in the tree, the police might never get informed of that. But our 911 dispatchers have a protocol. They're following that protocol. They're trained well. And I want to thank them for their work and apologize for disparaging them inadvertently with the questions that I ask around 911 data. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And if I may, I have a couple of items. My first item is if I could ask one of our citizens to stand, Ms. Elvira Johnson-Williams, and come forward, ma'am. When we talk about citizens getting engaged in the community and making a difference in their community, please come forward. This young lady, along with her civic league and her leadership, helped to organize what I call a community of cleaners. And last Saturday, I believe it was, we met out at the Olympian Sports Center, and many of us attended an event, and we picked up a lot of trash in the city of Portsmouth. Now, this would not have been possible without the leadership of this fine citizen right here and her civic league, who took it upon themselves to organize and bring the resources to the table. And I also want to thank Rivers Casino Portsmouth, who provided the lunches for us, and thank our interim city manager, who was on site working very hard and picking up trash. So, ma'am, just on behalf of the Portsmouth City Council, I wanted to say thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
The other item I wanted to share with everyone in the audience and my colleagues on council, we will have a new Virginia First Cities chairperson. And I believe that chairperson will be none other, I know that chairperson will be none other than our vice mayor, Lisa Lucas Burke. So let's give her a hand. And ma'am, if you could take a moment to share with the citizens what the Virginia First Cities is and what you'll be doing in that role, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for putting me on the spot. Virginia First Cities is an organization that helps localities like Portsmouth to be able to get funding and to be a liaison through our General Assembly sessions. They advocate for issues that we wouldn't ordinarily have the leverage on our own to do by ourselves. So we have cities such as Newport News, Richmond, Norfolk, and some other counties that are south of us, and we meet twice a year, and also during the Virginia Municipal League meetings, and we go over information that helps us to be empowered to getting things like addressing our brownfields, to make sure that our General Assembly looks at funding for those things. We look at the HB 599 funding that helps our public safety to be funded through programs. They also help us to deal with other issues. There were some localities that were looking at changes to how city councils' charters are addressed and how they are changed at the General Assembly level. So Virginia First Cities is an organization that Portsmouth is affiliated with, and I've been on that committee since I joined the City Council in 2007. So I've served as vice chair for the last 2 years. And so at our annual meeting in May, I will be appointed as the chair of Virginia First City. So if you want more information, we do have a website, and we do need pictures for Portsmouth, because when they click on Portsmouth, they want to see some pictures. So if we can download some pictures so that when people go to the website, they can find out more information about our city as well. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to serving you and providing you more information as we proceed through the years.
Thank you, ma'am. The other thing I wanted to point out is this came as a release to us December 14th, 2022. It is from Chicago, Illinois. The Government Finance Officers Association is pleased to announce that the City of Portsmouth, Virginia, has received the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for its budget. And the reason why that's important, certainly all of our city staff who participated, we give you all of the accolades, but I believe that our interim city manager was a part of the financial team at that time. And so some of the guidelines that they look at in determining this award, your policy documents, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. So I just want to recognize, you hear a lot about some of the not so good things that happen in our city, but I can assure you that our staff are first class, and they're working hard every day to keep us first class. So thank you on behalf of this city council, and we surely appreciate all of the efforts. You too, Trey Burke, our finance guy. Now we'll move on to the next item, which are pending items, and that's pending items. Madam City Manager.
For me, I just wanted to do a pending item there's one last empowerment forum, public empowerment forum that will be held on Thursday at IC Norcom High School between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m. We'll be talking about public safety as well as technology. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Dr. Whitaker, sure, you have the floor.
Yes, this is for the city manager. Can we get an update on the disparity study, and particularly if we can, during our public work session, hear from Ms. Vernetta Mitchell, so that any questions we want to ask, we can speak to her directly. And the other issue in regards to the empowerment forums, I've raised it with our marketing department. Can we get the information, if there's no objection from council, can we get the information regarding how we are spending with the Virginia pilot versus our minority newspapers, such as the New Journal and Guide, which is the third oldest black-owned newspaper in the country, and so that we can see if there are some disparities there with how we're marketing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And can you provide that over a 3-year period?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you all. And that concludes our report on pending items. We have now come to item 23-115, non-agenda speakers. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker's statement.
Yes, sir. City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than to any particular member of the City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first speaker for the evening, Mr. James Cheek. Mr. Cheek, sir, please come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is James Cheek. I live at 439 Green Street in Old Town, very close to Effingham and the Naval Hospital. Purpose of my being here is to express my concern for me and my neighbors of the neighborhood for the continuing discharge of excess food remnants and grease into the Portsmouth sewer system by the district restaurant at 448 Green Street. The restaurant is a thriving business, but their grease trap overflow and dishwater and garbage disposal is filled with food grease and flows into the sewer header in the 400 block of Green Street. The grease plugs the residents and business discharge sewer lines and causes frequent backup. It's always been a problem for me. I live right across the street from the restaurant, but recently the problem has increased and has affected 4 other residences on Green Street, as well as the Wilson apartment building complex, requiring pressure blowout services from the city and personal plumbing expense. What was my response? I complained to the district restaurant verbally and with a written note, and I've seen no effort by the restaurant to correct or abate the situation, as the problem has increased, not decreased. Short-term corrective action, I contacted Russell Stevens' staff at Public Utilities, and they were going to inspect the sewer and clean it. I can report that they have done that because the performance of my downstairs land toilet has significantly increased. They also agreed to speak to the restaurant about the problem on behalf of our community. But what's the bigger problem? The bigger problem is that there's no current laws, ordinances, or rules that punish offenders or fines or shutdown provisions that abuse healthy and safe sewer operations. We really depend upon the good conscience of the businesses for the common good of the community. The district restaurant has shown no inclination or interest in adhering to that principle. Does this problem exist anywhere else in Portsmouth? Well, infrequently, really. They do most of the businesses do a good job. As you well know, there's 10 or 12 restaurants on High Street, Roger Brown's, Griff's, whatever. Very few problems there. I never see that pressure truck there. One other example of extreme abuse is the McDonald's restaurant on the corner of Effingham and London. That's also bad. The impact, not only does this lack of control and abuse affect individual residences with unnecessary plumbing costs, but it puts additional strain on the aging Portsmouth sewer system, already overburdened and overloaded. Dumping less grease into the sewers benefits us all. Shelton Morton, who's the sewer superintendent for Portsmouth, says that there are more calls to the blowout truck in the 400 block of Green Street than any other street in Portsmouth. I'm concerned about this, and I'm requesting that the council take some administrative action if possible. Maybe some negative publicity will stir the district restaurant to reconsider corrective action. But more importantly, I'm requesting that the council consider establishing a system of fines and restrictions for those entities that continually abuse sewer operation. Until Portsmouth puts some teeth into the abuse of sewer operations, unconcerned businesses will continue to ignore the consequences of their action. Other municipalities, such as Norfolk, have abuse systems, and establishing such a systems may even add a small amount of revenue to the system. The current district restaurant has not executed their food disposal requirements in a responsible manner. Their continuing negligence has resulted in unnecessary burdens to the city and the residents of Bond Square. These issues will continue as long as the district restaurant continues their current operation. Corrective action is needed. I hold in my hand a contained sample of the product that comes out of the sewer. It is nothing but congealed grease, toilet paper, and food remnants. It's a real problem. I'm happy that it's only affecting a few places in our city, but my neighborhood's one of them.
Sir, you go ahead and finish your thought. You don't have to rush. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I think that's the essence of what I'm trying to say here. There doesn't seem to be any controls in place to ensure that businesses operate their businesses responsibly, and it's a real problem. And where businesses meet communities like they do in Bond Square, it's even a double down situation that we'd like to avoid. I don't have an answer. I dump 5 gallons of hot water in my sewer system every day to keep it flushed out. But other than that, the solution depends upon the generator.
Thank you, sir. And
Thank you.
if you would like to remain after the meeting, we can get some additional information from you.
All right, good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Dr. William Dotson. If you will come forward, sir, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, William Dotson, 801 Mimosa Park Manor neighborhood. Thank you for hearing from me again. I want to speak to the 911 because it was my FOIA that brought that to your attention, and it was generated by Chief Jenkins, who so graciously assembled the data. And after he generated it, he said, Doc, I forgot to include some data, like Admiral Hugel pointed out. When the police get the call, the priority 1 calls do get through, and they respond within 4 minutes. The police department does a wonderful job. That's not where the problem is. I had the opportunity to interview our fire chief, and I still can't pronounce his last name. Can anybody? Yeah, something along those lines. Thank you. Interview him, and he took me over to a gentleman named Dr. Chris Patterson, who is in charge of the 911 system, who I'd seriously recommend that you have here to present to you. He gave me a wonderful explanation in that we only have 16 lines, 8 landlines and 8 cell phone lines that come into that system. When those lines are full, the lines go to the endless ring of death. Now, that does not mean that somebody is not in the queue. It just means that they will not know they're in the queue to be answered. And if people hang up, they go to the bottom of the queue. Hopefully, some of you have already heard this presentation, but I wanted to reiterate it again today so some of the public could hear it over again today. What I did not know, and what is so interesting, is that the chief also told me that 10 years ago, this new system was requested. He also told me that it was promised by the IT gentleman that stood right here where I'm standing, promised to this city to be done last year and finished. A gentleman who stood up here and said, I need 9 more months to do that. I think something needs to be said about that extension and what's being done. But I think the council here takes some responsibility for it because we are not demanding of our city employees that they shape up. I sat out in front of Manor Mart one day when 3 employees were inside and the city truck was running outside for 3 hours while they sat at the gambling machines. I called the city dispatcher who chewed me out and said, leave them alone. They're not doing anything that hurts you. We have an attitude problem in this city, within our city. And I'm so glad we have a new city manager who I think is well set up to do this and knowledgeable enough to handle some of these attitude problems that we have in this city. But I think you as a council are not demanding enough of her. I want to see the woman sweat. Not quite enough. I think you need to demand reports of the health of our city to come to you. I went online to see, are there some measures? The state, the chief pointed me to a report who measures the financial health of our stress of our city, and some other reports that we can use to measure the health of our city. And I'm not sure that you of a council are aware of what bad shape we are in. We are spiraling into poverty. My opinion of reading the reports. Thank you, Mimi. But yes, a healthy discussion could be done on that. But it is my opinion, thank you, that we are spiraling into poverty, and we need to find a way out of this. Now, this year I've had some good reports. I had the chance to interview Mr. Donahue, who said there are some wonderful things coming to our city, which might speak to what you're saying to Mimi, that are getting us out of this. But it's not enough. We need somebody to steer the ship. We need a captain. And I think that person is Mimi. But we also need an administrative committee. We need an admiral who can look at the chief and say, let's sail this ship and let's go this direction. Thank you. We need some direction. And I don't think y'all know the health of the city or where we need to go. We have some imbalances in this city that are strikingly visible. One of those is that we have an extraordinary amount of poor property in the city that we are taxing the daylights out of. And we have this perception that we have rich people in it that can make up that difference. I'm sorry, I had a lady in this audience when we were speaking the other night said, yeah, we need to tax those rich people. Sweetheart, you don't have any rich people in Portsmouth. You haven't met rich people yet. If there's rich people in the city of Portsmouth, there might be 3 out there, and that's it. We are a city of poverty. That's where we stand in this state when I read all these reports that I see on the health of our city. And I think we need some direction to understand what causes. The balance that we have isn't right. We don't have the right balance of residents to businesses, and there's some other things, and I got 11 seconds. So I want to repeat, Mimi, I want to see you sweat. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Angela Britt. Ms. Britt, if you will come forward, ma'am, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Heavenly Father, again, we give you the praise and honor. We thank you for what you're going to do in this place today. We ask you to give us an ear to hear and an eye to see. Continue to have your way in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
My name is Angela Britt. This is my grandson, Ashanti Britt, who was killed a few months ago in Dale's home, gun violence. I'm here today because I really don't know what this city is doing in reference to gun violence. Whether you know it or not, there's another kid was shot last night, 5 times, Churchland, fighting for his life right now. I don't understand that we can have 14 murders since the first of the year, and it's only March. It appeared to me that the city council is really not addressing the issue. You know, we come up here and we speak about gun violence and we talk about things that's going on in the community, but really nothing is being done. Unfortunately, the children continue to die. You know, it's just a sad situation that you have to come up here and keep repeating this. And last week, we went to 2 reset walk with the police department. The week before that, we went to 3 reset walk with the police department. What is going to be done about this gun pandemic? You have people, families that are being torn apart, who have been murdered, and a lot of these offenders are walking. We just need to know what is going to be done, Mayor. We need a leader. We need someone to step up to the plate and make a difference. Speak to the people. Let the people know what are the plans, what is the game plan. It's like day in and day out. And it's a sad situation that each child is getting younger and younger. But no one have a solution or answer, and no one can give us any answers about what's next. Is this going to be the norm? Is this the norm for us as a community, as a country? When is someone going to make a difference? You know, we have congresswomen and men, delegates, who's over these areas. I live in Chesapeake, and Louise Lucas is one of my councilwomen. I vote for her, have been, along with Don Scott. But you can't get an appointment with neither one of these councilmen, women, men, or delegate. You can't sit down, have a conversation about what's going on in our community. The sad part to me is that you vote for these people who are supposed to represent you, but they really don't understand your plan of what's going on in your life because you can't get a conversation with them. One of them don't even have an office. The other one have an office, but he's working under his firm, attorney. And he's not using his name in business, so that's a whole new story. But I stand here today with concern because it's like every week we doing reset walks, sometimes 2 and 3 walks a week. But, you know, you got family members who have been affected by gun violence who just can't come out and stand and say something to the public or come together let's come up with a solution or conclusion. And it's just heartbreaking that somebody else's child will be dying tonight or tomorrow or one day this week. So I come here today before the council. I know I do not live in Portsmouth, but I have a lot of family who does, who's very concerned. And I'm concerned because I'm afraid for my nephews and cousins and uncles. I'm just afraid that what's next? And no solution, week in and week out. So I'm asking the council, what do you guys have on the table? What we going to do about this problem? I just don't know. We need help. We need to find out how we going to address this gun violence and this gun pandemic. We should be out here just like Black Lives Matter. We need to be out here protesting, calling the National Guard. This is an emergency. Every day kid is dying. It's sad that the only way someone get involved when it become your child. And I really wouldn't wish that on no one. But Mayor, as the leader of this council, we need you to step up. Tell us what is your game plan for 2023, 24? Because right now we don't see anything going on except another reset walk. So for those ones that's home sitting here watching me and wondering why I'm standing here, we need you guys to come out and support and help us fight against this gun pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Britt.
Yes, sir. You have the floor, Dr. Whitaker.
First of all, sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
What you're seeing happening isn't going to be resolved at the city council level.
Understand.
The whole culture of this country, like Dr. King said, one of the greatest purveyors of evil. And until we start putting lives above guns, you're not going to see any difference. When you have senators at the federal level, which is where you have your gun control, when you have senators coming on the television after children have been killed, and all they can say is our prayers and thoughts are with you, when they have the power to put in place reform because their pockets are being lined, that's what it's all about. And what you're seeing happening nationwide, what you see happening in Portsmouth is just a microcosm of what's happening nationwide. And you have some of the same things in this city. Why you see neglect. It's because there are those who have put the economic interests of themselves and others over the lives of people.
That's right.
And that's what it's about. And so that's not going to change anytime soon. And the council doesn't have the authority to change that, although we do have authority to address things that are root causes of poverty that lead to crime, which, again, will this council take the moral authority encouraged to implement policies, fully funding our schools, providing recreation. Will we do those things? Demand living wages. Okay? Are we going to do those things? Demand that contractors, when they come in this city, that they provide contracting opportunities to contractors who hire people from low-income areas. And so those are things we can do, but it's not going to solve the issue you're talking about because it didn't start with this council. It's at a higher level than this. But I appreciate you coming up here and voicing like you do.
But you know what, Dr. Whitaker, I don't understand, is that the congressmen and women and the delegates in this area, why haven't they came on the media and spoke of any of the stuff that's going on? I haven't seen Louise Lucas, I haven't seen Don Scott. No one is talking about these gun control issues. I understand bills and legislation need to be passed in Richmond. I understand that. But at least dress your area that you are representing to let the people know that you are aware. We haven't seen neither one of these delegates on TV saying a word.
And I think sincerely that they care about these children just as much as anyone else. I'm not going to doubt that.
Okay.
I'm saying that the resolution of it is at higher levels, but also you gotta understand the culture that we live in.
I agree. Thank you for your speech earlier.
Thank you,
Enjoy your
ma'am.
day.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, Laniqua Taylor. Ms. Taylor, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Hello, City Council, Vice Mayor, Mayor.
Hello.
Congratulations to our new intern, City Manager. I prepared something to say. My address is 622 Effingham Street, Portsmouth, Virginia. So happy to be here on this last week of Women's Appreciation Month. I'm Laniqua Queen Taylor, the CEO of For the People Incorporated. We are a record label that was incorporated right here in Portsmouth in 2016. Structured after working in the entertainment industry 5 years, living in Atlanta, Georgia. I decided to provide Hampton Roads area with my knowledge. We began servicing the community through feeding the people, movies, live music, personalized bags for youth, males, and women, music therapy, inspirational brunches, and seminars. We realigned our structure. For the People Incorporated became a label and a youth arts facility. I created multiple programs from ages 6 to 22 to teach the youth self-confidence, writing and recording music, arts through drawing, painting, classes on entrepreneurship, talent showcases, conflict resolution brunches for realignment, and more, which transitioned into a youth arts facility, title extended to us by the Norfolk Zoning Department. We opened our physical location inside of Military Circle Mall, May 21, and by June 22, they announced to the news first they were closing. I knew this was a calling for me to bring the physical location to my city where I live and where I was born, to Portsmouth, Virginia. I needed to save the community, as this mother spoke, from gun violence and mental imprisonment. Last year, I acquired my brand new, not yet developed physical location. I was a part of the commencement ceremony at Holly Point Building in August. I signed my lease. Since then, I applied for all the grants that were offered in our city. Some I didn't qualify for, but the grant I was awarded was $10,000 and supposed to be broken up into payments of $2,500. I'm grateful for the award, but in order to save my children here in Portsmouth, we need more funding, more attention, and more awareness. Upon being awarded, I was told I would present before the board, and the day of the meeting, it was canceled a few hours before. No one has reached out. I have reached out to Doug Weller. He says it's a communication and marketing holdup. He just sent me to Peter G today, and he didn't answer. So I have no clue what's going on with the funding. I couldn't understand why I'm getting the runaround if the city needs more places to have our youth safe, better options for them to protect their mental health, better options for parents, drug and violence-free facility. I need the city's help as much as possible, not just funding. I still have an open slab at the property. because the city needs to be solicited for the bathroom, the gas line, basically to unlock the door. I need to ask for permission. I'm here saying I need the city to overdo it for the People Incorporated. Until the business is built out, I want to ask, where is the grant funding? Because my programs still have to be available for the youth. I still have to acquire a space. I still have to provide them with the food. I still have to provide them with the teachers. And would the city be willing to partner with my company on a city building that's not being used to put my facility inside of it until Holly Point is done, or even permanently replace my building at no cost? This is one of the first ways to implement change for the people. Is a great way to implement change here in our city. I'm active in our community. I'm active beyond our community. I do well speaking. I do well gravitating to our youth. I do well gravitating to our youth. Let me say that again. So if I was to be put in a certain position for the city, I would make it for the people. I'm a servant of God, and I'm a servant for my people. I understand at this very moment that it's a lot of things going on in the city that are out of our control, but for the people can help get some things into control, especially with the youth age 6 to 22. We can not only give jobs, but we can have volunteer spaces, and we not only have class spaces for after-school programs, but we are willing to run our program all day long. Our facility is rented out by the community. So our music studios rented by the community, our photography spaces rented by the community. Our storefront has items in it that our students actually created. They're entrepreneurs, right? And while the community buys into that business, I'm able to give my services away for free or low cost. So what I'm asking is, where is the grant money for these programs to exist? And is the city willing to partner with my company?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Someone will see you. If you would remain after the meeting, someone will talk to you. Thank you.
Smith, does she know who to go to speak to?
Actually, the manager stated that she would have somebody. Manager, could you address that, please?
So I think what happened was, the previous city manager had put some money aside for new businesses, but I'm not aware of the logistics of what that application process was. And I believe it was part of ARPA. So that's something that has to come back before council. And I'll try to catch up and see what was going on and where that ended.
Heard and understood, but these grants are still listed on the Portsmouth website. So whether it was the old city manager that was the person that had something to do with it or not, the people that were awarded these funding, we have not been reached out to. And it's still up and active, these particular grants. They're not open for people to actually apply, but they're still listed on the website.
Very good. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Carroll.
Evening again. And my name and address, of course, is a matter of record. I said I was going to revisit and make some connections between my non-agenda comments and an earlier item. The definition of whining is complaining to somebody who can't help you with your problem. So I've come to you with a problem already, and I'm going to come to you with a solution. Some things in the news have indicated that we're about to embark on a massive spending program. Last week you heard from, or 2 weeks ago, you heard from me and a number of people about the real estate assessment problem. Mine went up hugely. And as I pointed out, my real estate assessment looks like a roller coaster. Up and down one year, down, up, with no rhyme or reason. No mention was made by council of addressing the rate. And I would concede that the assessments may or may not be addressable. So the rate is the only way to address it. In short, and I would like to reference a comment made earlier, we have come to the point where we have robbed the golden goose to where she's barren, and now we're carving up the goose. People cannot continue to pay the real estate tax rate that we are burdened with. And I would venture to say, I'd be curious, if you take the population and divide that by an average household, how many of roughly 30,000 households actually pay a full fair share of their taxes? I can't continue to do this, and I've lived here all of my life. With the exception of one individual on council, I am well versed and knowledgeable about the plans for the waterfront and the need to diversify the tax base. And the problem we've had in this city for at least 20 years is this waterfront has been fought over by power brokers like a flock of seagulls fight over a fish head. And we get nowhere. Putting apartments up is not a reliable tax base. We need small businesses in this city. I came out of retirement, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, because I had to. Not because I wanted to, I had to. I can't make it without doing it. And I happen to work for a small business. I don't know how they're doing it. And I don't know how people are doing in this city, having to pay their taxes and pay for the food and everything else that has gone up the way it has gone up. And I understand that is not entirely this city council's fault, but the taxes are in your control. The waterfront needs to be developed. There's no question about it. But it needs to be done in a manageable way that minimizes the impact on the few people that are actually paying the taxes in this city. You're doing too much, too fast, and it's killing us. So, solution. I went back and revisited the $23 million from last year. Out of that 23 and out of those 6 items, only one of them was a grant item. The rest of those were budgeted items to the school board. That is an opportunity somewhere in the neighborhood, it was $4 million, $19 million that you've got to play with for next year's school budget, where you can give us some relief and something to be seriously considered. You can't do it all at one time. You can't fix every problem at one time. But we have to do this in a manageable way. And people are suffering. And the young couples that you need to bring into this city to continue this city thriving can't afford to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Florence Michener. Name and address, ma'am, and you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Florence Michener. I live at 3508 Wright Road, and that is in the Edgewood Park section of Portsmouth. I'm here tonight to ask the council to do what is right for your Portsmouth homeowners and lower our real estate tax rate. Last year, my land assessment increased by $55,060. My land has not moved, has not been improved. In fact, it should have lost value because Portsmouth won't fix our storm water drainage flooding problems. These flooding problems have been repeatedly reported since before the big drainage project in Ebony Heights years ago. My property borders on Ebony Heights. My garage has flooded repeatedly from heavy rainstorms, not just from hurricanes. In fact, 2 years ago, water came within 1 inch of flooding my den. Now I have to pay for a flood insurance policy from FEMA at an additional yearly cost of $464, even though I am not in a floodplain. Public Works sure isn't protecting my property. Interestingly enough, my house value dropped $5,500 last year during my 21.45% rise in my assessment. My home is 61 years old. My parents built it when I was 6 years old. I am the homeowner now. My home has aged and depreciated, just like my neighborhood. I contacted the assessor last year because I thought surely there had been a mistake. But I kept getting the, quote, fair market value refrain. But these market values are not fair to your property owners, especially those on fixed incomes. We are not capitalizing on this phantom housing boom sale prices. It is costing us money for sellers to make money. The rise in our real estate tax bills has had a substantial financial impact on homeowners. Apparently, that is not recognized as being significant enough to make an appeal. But I am appealing to you today because you are the ones who have the ability to change this. The proposed assessment taking effect July 1st, 23, raises my land value $75,990 from the 21 assessment. And my house, which was appraised down $5,500 just this past year, is now up $6,940. And these are the numbers that I will be taxed on. Portsmouth, as we all know, has the highest real estate tax rate in all of Hampton Roads, $1.30 per $100 assessed. And Portsmouth also has the highest crime rate in Hampton Roads. That alone reduces the value of our homes. Norfolk's tax rate is $1.25 per $100 assessed. Newport News is $1.20 per $100 assessed. Suffolk is $1.09 per $100 assessed. Chesapeake is $104. Virginia Beach is 99 cents. Portsmouth is putting an unfair tax burden on its homeowners. It is not our fault that Portsmouth has so many tax-exempt properties within its city limits. Please do the right thing and lower our real estate tax to $1.17 per $100 assessed to offset these recent assessment increases. The city assessor you hired and trusted to conduct our assessments suggested this rate because he recognized the financial impact this would have on your homeowners. He termed this rate as net neutral. Please lower our tax rate. Please do not let this real estate tax us out of our homes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, Elvira Johnson-Williams. Please state your name and address, ma'am, and you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayors, members of council in the city of Portsmouth. My address is on record. I didn't come here to complain, fuss nobody out, which some people do need to be fussed out, but not tonight. Tonight I want to stand here. You caught me off guard, Mayor, by the way. I wanted to come and thank all the people that showed out on March the 18th for our cleanup. I am so humbled. I was amazed. But I want to try to name most of the folks that I remember. So folks that's listening, if I forget you because I didn't see you, it's just that simple. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Mimi Terry, Bill Moody, Mark Hugel, Dr. Bill Dotson and wife. Got to thank them because it was on my phone. They wanted to give y'all some gift bags and stuff, but it was too late to get it together. They told me it was going to rain, but Elvira don't believe in that. I have the faith of a mustard seed. I believe that when God say do something, he going to make sure it get done. And I know he was in the midst of what happened this past couple of weeks ago. We had a little bit better than 101 people was my last count. We collected over 405 bags of trash. We collected over 69,345 pounds of debris, including furniture and all this other good stuff. But our work is not done. I got to thank Commander James Cullen. He provided us with vests, radios, so that we can keep in touch with one another, so we can see who needed what where. I got to really thank my seasoned seniors running up and down the highway, making sure nobody ran out of anything or got whatever they wanted. We had breakfast, y'all. We had biscuits from McDonald's, and we had biscuits from Chick-fil-A, and we had donuts from everybody in the world that made donuts, and coffee. We got to thank our police department for that. Chief Jenkins was on point. Sheriff Michael Moore was on point. It was so many people, the Naval Hospital, the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, all of them. They say Norfolk, I say Portsmouth, that's where we are. We had so many private citizens that came together to do a cleanup. The good news was this. I started with Green Lakes the week before, and then we did our thing out there in we said Portsmouth Boulevard. When I looked up, we had Portsmouth Boulevard, Cavalier Boulevard, Victory Boulevard, Rodman Avenue, all of it. Got to thank my awesome motorcycle clubs, the Afro Dolls and Thunder and Lightning motorcycle clubs. They came out full force. And then I got asked this question that made me almost want to sit down and cry. When can we do this again? My answer was real simple. We can do it every day of the week. You don't need a big production to do it. Just get up and do it. You might see me at any time out there on the street picking up trash. I've even witnessed Mimi Terry out there picking up trash. She didn't ask nobody to come, and neither do I. But this was something that was put on my heart. So I'm pleading to the citizens of this city that say that they love this city. When you've got trash in your car and you think about throwing it out, think about that 81-year-old woman out there with a raincoat on picking up your trash. Think about that 5-year-old child that's running around picking up your trash. Think about your mama and your grandmama. You're going home, please take it with you. Take your trash with you when you go home. If you don't want to take it home, find a dumpster to put it in. Just don't throw it out because you see somebody picking up trash don't mean they want to pick up yours. Have a nice day, and thank you, everybody.
Our next speaker, Ms. Pamela Wilkins. Ma'am, come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Wilkins, and I live in the Westbury community of Portsmouth.
Could you please talk into the microphone, ma'am?
I'm sorry.
Pull it down.
Good evening, Mayor.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, council persons, and staff. Okay? I'm Pamela Wilkins, and I live in the Westbury community. I come before you today to echo some of the stuff that's already been said, especially about the tax assessments. Now, back in 2011, I've been coming to these council meetings ever since then, and most of you weren't on the city council at that time except for Councilman Moody. We had an issue with the tax assessments only in the community of Westbury. The city of Portsmouth had hired a tax assessor that was terminated. I think it was either Newport News or Hampton. It was on the peninsula. And the city of Portsmouth hired her. during her tenure, she raised the taxes only in the community of Westbury. So that would have made our mortgage payments go up. So what we did as a community, we come together, we went before the Equalization Board and expressed our concern, and they referred us to City Council. So we came to City Council, and we expressed our concerns and all, and thank God it was lowered, and we didn't have to deal with that. So my question was, how can you assess just one community and not the entire city? So that leads me to believe, well, first of all, why does Portsmouth have a track record of hiring people that were terminated from other agencies and they take them on? And then once they take them on and then they mess up, then they terminate them. So that's been a practice. And like I said, I've been coming to these city council meetings ever since 2011. I would love to see leadership in this city. Finally, leadership in this city that's going to look out for the citizens of this city. It seemed like with all this land we have and all this going on, why couldn't nobody think, the assessor or the city council, think of other ways to make money in this city other than taxing the citizens every year, just taxing us. We're bearing the burden of the income that's coming in this city. All this land that could have been utilized, businesses could have been brought here. Where is the leadership? I haven't seen good leadership since 2011. And I don't mean to offend anybody, I'm just stating what the facts are. And also, so the question remains, when are we going to have leadership that's going to step up and look out for the citizens of Portsmouth? When? You know, we got so much going on, crime, the taxes and all that. Then the casino comes, we voted to have that here. What are we going to do with that money? We were thinking that that's going to help us taxpayers to take a deep breath and exhale. Okay, we got some more money coming in. Maybe they'll lower our taxes. But that isn't happening. Okay, so I'm trying to hurry up, for my time is up. Now, getting back of the different types of assessment, we don't know. There are several different types of assessments that assessor can use. I don't know which one she used, but apparently whatever type that's being used over the years, there needs to be a change and maybe try another type. From 2020, my tax rate, my assessment increased by 4.9%, which added $5,860 to the value of the house. From 21 to 22, it increased 4.8%. Now, this new proposed increase from 22 last year to this year, 27.4%. Come on, really? And that's with no upgrades to the property. How did it jump that high? So that's an additional increase of $35,760. Come on, it don't take a rocket scientist to see this. A rocket scientist to see that something is wrong with this. So, Council, I ask you on behalf of my community and all the other communities in Portsmouth that you all revisit that and think about the citizens for a change. And I'm not talking about you newly people that just come on the council because you don't know, you weren't here. You weren't even here during that time, Dr. Whitaker. But come on, we need council members, we need leaders in this city that's going to work for the citizens and not for our own personal agendas. So I ask and pray that you all reconsider and step up as leaders of this city that we can be proud of and that we can vote you back in.
Thank you, ma'am. Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And Ms. Wilkins, we do have an interim city assessor who has reached out to every member on this council, and it was brought to our attention that the tools, the process that was used was inaccurate, and that there's going to be an adjustment on the assessments that were put out. Our interim city assessor is here. If you have any concerns, you or anyone, Janie Culpepper is here. You can reach out to her office. There will be some readjustments that will occur, and this council is considering, we're taking a look at the the real estate tax rate. As a council, we will look at and make a decision on what is accurate. Of course, the casino, you can't make a decision, you get it one day, and then the next day, we just jump and make a rate. They have to make the determination of what that looks like, what the funding is gonna be over a period of time, and it can't happen in 2 months. So casino just opened January 23rd. So once we realize what is gonna be gained from the casino, then this council will make an additional adjustment, hopefully in the future, to lower that tax rate for our citizens.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Well, I think my colleague said it all. We've heard you. Everybody up here pays taxes, real estate taxes. My rate, just like yours, went up, and it seems to be centered in the land values, but we can't control assessments as a council. I think most of you know that. We can control the rate, and I think we've all got 2 ears up here, and we're hearing, I'm sure that my colleagues have received calls just like myself on people letting us know that their assessments went up, in some cases double digits. So we just received a proposed budget this week, and I think our workshop is April the 11th, where we're going to discuss the budget proposal. And I think that's the time for us to digest the budget needs, and also the needs of our citizens to be able to afford to live in Portsmouth. I'm keenly aware what the tax rate is, and every speaker's almost mentioned it. We're the highest rate in the Hampton Roads. Personally, I think it's time for that to end. But thank you for your input. I think you're probably speaking to the choir up here when it comes to the need to do something. We just have to decide what that something is going to be, and hopefully we'll do that in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the comments tonight about taxes. So just one other comment about assessments. While the interim city assessor and her team are going back to review assessments, if you have a specific issue with your assessment, the only way to make sure that your specific issue gets looked at is to appeal and visit the city assessor. So my encouragement to you is take your issue to the city assessor and give them the chance to review the discrepancies. The 27% change just doesn't track with how market values have changed over the past year. It's worth making the trip, making the phone call, and having that conversation directly with the city assessor and her team to try to understand what's going on and what can be done about it.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from my colleagues on council? Seeing none, that concludes this meeting for tonight, and it is adjourned. Stay safe and healthy.